Welcome on the channel podcast with our the Democratic Republic of Congo has ended Africa's adventure in the second round of group games after the Black Stars of Ghana drew goalless against the Three Lions of England, and of course the Democratic Republic of Congo, the Leopards, have also lost by a goal to nil against Colombia. We will gonna remember they drew 1-1 against Portugal in the first game of the group when Yohan Wissa had an equalizer after Joao Neves scored the first goal. So we're going to connect and talk about the scorecard of African teams within the round of second round of games after the second round of games that have been played. So in the first round of games, we saw two wins from African teams, and that was the Les Éléphants de la Côte d'Ivoire, that's the Elephants of Ivory Coast, and of course we saw the Black Stars of Ghana also winning, and that was Ivory Coast defeating Ecuador, and of course the Black Stars of Ghana defeating Panama. And we saw four draws. We saw Morocco drawing against Brazil. We saw Egypt drawing against Belgium. We saw DR Congo drawing against Portugal. And of course, we saw the Cape Verdean team, the Cabo Verde, the Blue Sharks, also drawing with Spain. So that was in the first round of games. African teams had 2 wins, 4 draws, and 4 losses. That was the scorecard that happened. And in this, we also 4 losses, and that was when Senegal lost against France, and we saw Algeria also losing 3-0 against the Argentine team, and of course we also saw Tunisia losing by 5-1 against the Swedish team, and those were the results we saw in the first round of games. And of course the opening game when the Republic of South Africa lost by 2-0 against one of the co-hosts, that was Mexico. In the second round of games, at least there is a bit of improvement because the number of wins has increased. In the second round of games, we've seen 3 wins from African countries. And of course, Egypt defeated New Zealand by 3-1, and that was Egypt's first ever victory in the history of the World Cup. Since 1934, when they started playing in the World Cup, to 1990 in Italy, to 2018 in Russia, and of course this current World Cup, it became the first ever win for Egypt in the history of the World Cup when they won by 3-1 against New Zealand. And we saw Morocco also defeating the Scotland team by 1-0, courtesy Ismail Saibari, the guy who scored against Brazil in the first game. And of course we saw Algeria also defeating Jordan by 2-1 after going down by 1-0. So they came from a goal down to have that victory, which ended up as the Algerians, the Desert Foxes, having or taking the maximum 3 points on the game. And that was 3 wins. So in the second round of games, we've seen 3 wins from African countries in the World Cup and 3 draws. We've witnessed 3 draws because we saw the Cape Verdeans drawing in that game against Uruguay, which ended in a 2-2 draw. Quite a difficult one for the Cape Verdeans, but they managed to scale through with a draw, which was quite good for the Cape Verdeans. And of course, South Africa drew 1-1 after going down against Czech Republic. They came back and then drew the game after Teboho Mokoena scored from the spot kick, which made sure that the South Africans had 1 point. So possibly they have their destiny in their own hands, depending on how the last game is going to end. If they're able to beat South Korea, if South Africa is able to beat South Korea, they'll be tied in 4 points, and that could possibly help them to secure a spot. Even if it's not going to be the second spot, at least one of the 3rd best placed teams, 8 teams that are going to be picked to add up to the top 24, I think South Africa can have that chance. So after the Cape Verdean draw, the South African draw, the Black Stars of Ghana also drew in a masterclass, a masterpiece of defensive quality, when the Black Stars made sure they shut the door, they closed the spaces, they plugged the spaces, they stayed deep and stayed compact. And that was the reason why even the English press were giving a whole lot of praises for the Black Stars' defensive-minded capability. And the Black Stars had something from the game, which ended in a goalless draw. And for the first time in the history of Ghana have gone 2 first group games at the World Cup without conceding, which is absolutely historic. And that is the feat that has been commanded by the legendary tactical man Carlos Queiroz. So the English fans saw a 40-year-old experience in coaching. That was the reason why the Black Stars had a masterclass defensive quality and ability to pain the English in their yard and avoid defeat in that game, of which the Black Stars had something positive from the game. So we've seen 3 draws in from the contingent of Africans, and of course, the losses that came in the first round of games stayed. So the same 4 losses, and of course, we saw the Senegalese team losing by 3 goals to 2 against Norway, which was quite unfortunate. A lot of people, especially Africans, had high hopes for the Senegalese setup. The performance they gave up during the last AFCON when they won the AFCON by beating Morocco, and of course the subsequent friendlies that they played. But in the build up to the World Cup, the 2 friendlies they played, the results weren't quite good. They lost against USA. They couldn't win against Saudi Arabia. In the first game of the World Cup, they lost by 3 goals to 1 against France. And of course, in the second game, they lost 3-2 against Norway, which was quite unfortunate. So Senegal need to up their game by at least getting a 4-0 win against Iraq, going to the last game to secure a mathematical chance of getting into the next stage of competition through having one of the best 3rd place spots that is going to be available in the competition. So after Senegal also being one of the teams that lost, we saw Tunisia embarrassingly losing against Japan by 4 goals to 0, which is quite unfortunate. So Tunisia in 2 games have conceded 9 goals, losing 5-1 against Sweden, losing 4-0 against Japan. This is totally unacceptable on the part of the Tunisians. So it was one of the defeats that we saw the African teams was having in the competition. And after Tunisia and Senegal also lost, we saw the Democratic Republic of Congo also losing in that game against Colombia by a goal to 0, which is quite unfortunate on the part of the Democratic Republic of Congo, the Leopards. Goalkeeper Lionel Mpasi gave a good account of himself by making brilliant saves, and that ensured that he kept the DR Congo side in the game. But unfortunately, they lost by a goal to 0, and that goal scored by Victor Munoz, the right back of Crystal Palace for the Colombian team. And unfortunately, the Ivory Coast narrowly lost against Germany. It was a game that connoisseurs of the game, a lot of people who were at the game, were quite disappointed with the Ivorian side because it was a game that they were not supposed to lose. Started very well, had created some couple of decent chances, attacking the German team, came up with the first goal when Frankie Anikesi scored the first goal of the game. They were able to maintain their shape, keep up the pace, match up the Germans. But unfortunately, they conceded an equalizer, which was quite unfortunate on the part of the Ivorian team, the Elephants. And later on in the second half, Nicolas Pepe took on the ball, had some couple of brilliant flashes, then laid the pass to Simon Nandigra, who was just supposed to connect with the first kick. But like a lot of people weren't knowing what was running through the mind of Simon Adingra with regards to how that chance just came on board. And unfortunately, Simon Adingra couldn't make that chance count. And of course, Dennis Undav took that opportunity to punish the Les Éléphants de la Côte d'Ivoire. And that was how it ended when Ivory Coast lost by 2 goals to 1 in that game, which was quite unfortunate, but they still have their destiny in their own hands. Mind you, the Ivory Coast have never ever gone beyond the group stages in the World Cup. From the first appearance in 2006, that was in Germany, 2010 in South Africa, 2014 in Brazil, after missing out in Russia 2018, Qatar 2022, back in 2026, they won their first game against Ecuador, but unfortunately, the game that they were not supposed to lose against the German team, they lost, which was quite unfortunate, but they still have their destiny in their own hands. Going to the last game against Curacao, a draw. I mean, they must go for a win because Curacao are probably the weakest team within the group. Even though they drew against Ecuador after losing 7 goals to 1 against Germany, Ivory Coast can fancy their chances of going for a win against Curacao. 3 points will take them to 6 points, and that is when their tally is going to increase, and that is what is going to secure their spot. And historically, this current crop of Ivorian players or current generation of Elephants can be the first ever group to have ever gone beyond the group stages in the history of the World Cup, which is quite unfortunate on their part when they lost their first game. So that is the scorecard of African teams in the second round of games. 3 wins, 3 draws, 4 losses. The 3 wins were Morocco defeating Scotland, Egypt defeating New Zealand, and of course Algeria defeating Jordan. The 3 draws were South Africa drawing 1-1 against Czech Republic, And of course, we saw the Cabo Verdean team, the Blue Sharks, drawing 2-2 against the Uruguayan team. And of course, the Black Stars of Ghana drew goalless against the Three Lions of England. And the 4 losses were Ivory Coast losing by 2-1, the Tunisian team, the Carthage Eagles, losing 4-0 against Japan. And of course, the Teranga Lions of Senegal losing by 3-2 against the Norwegians. And we saw the Democratic Republic of Congo, the Leopards, losing by 1-0 in that game against Colombia. This has been the podcast channel with Awal. Thank you.